Welcome to Season 7 of Wellness as a Way of Life for Women Building the Future. I'm Megan Swan, wellness coach, consultant, and strategist, here to champion visionary women who are shaping tomorrow. This season, we dive into holistic wellness practices, mindset shifts, and real life stories from women who are leading change in tech, entrepreneurship, and beyond. My mission is to help you integrate wellness into every facet of your journey, so much so that it feels like a way of life. So you can show up as your most vibrant and impactful self. You can be a part of the movement by subscribing to my Substack for exclusive wellness tools, inspiring interviews, and a thriving community of future builders. There is a free and soon-to-be paid option launching this fall. And if you enjoy this episode, share it with a friend who's building the future too. Welcome back to the pod. Today's conversation is one I've been looking forward to for a while. Our guest, Samantha Diamond, is the co-founder and CEO of Bird&Be, a company that's completely reimagined what fertility support can look like. Sam's story isn't just about building a business, it's deeply personal. After being diagnosed with PCOS early in life and later experiencing pregnancy loss, she found herself navigating a fertility journey marked by anxiety, confusion, and costs that felt almost prohibitive. Rather than accept that experience as inevitable, Samantha drew on her expertise running a successful PR agency for leading beauty brands, and asked a powerful question. What if fertility support could be accessible, evidence-backed, and yes, beautifully designed? The result is Bird&Be, an 8-figure business that's grown 100% year over year with a 75% subscription revenue and more than 40,000 orders shipped. I love that you call it fertility desserts. I'm curious to hear more about that. Today, we're talking about the intersection of personal pain and turning that into purpose, what it takes to build a modern wellness brand that actually serves people's needs, and how Sam is changing the conversation around fertility for both men and women. Welcome to the show. Let's get into it.
So much for having me. And thanks for everything you are doing to share really important conversations like this about our own health as women.
Yeah, well, I feel like it's becoming more and more sort of commonplace to hear these conversations, but I think it's been such a long time coming that, it's not, there's never too much, especially around normalizing these things that so many women are struggling with. And for, arguably decades, we're largely struggling in silence. So we don't need to go down the whole journey of your personal pain, but I'd love for you, if you could kind of speak to any sort of catalyst moments that there were for you that, instead of thinking like, this really sucks, it's like, no, I'm going to solve this problem.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many, but I think kind of the original spark ties to exactly what you just said of like, this really sucks, but how can we make this not suck for other people? My previous job before Bird&Be was running a PR and marketing agency in the beauty space. So I was working with all the big beauty brands, hair care, skincare, makeup. And at the same time, I was going through my fertility journey, and I was accessing, doctors and naturopathic specialists, and I was taking medicine and I was taking supplements. And it was all very confusing. I was shopping the drugstore aisle and looking up and down for all kinds of different products, and they were definitely horribly packaged as compared to what I was used to working with in my day to day. And there was so much to understand. And I'm actually married to a fertility doctor. So I have this doctor in my pocket that nobody else has access like this. And I still was confused. And there was still so much out of his scope, especially in the naturopathic medicine, that, he was like, well, I'm not the expert. There's other experts. And so I'm trying to learn this basically a new language. And I'm thinking as I'm at work every day, the beauty industry has taught women so much about science. Like, we know what we need to use for our hair. We know what we need to use on our skin. We know if we have dry skin, we need this. And if we have curly hair, we need this. And we know, what ingredients to avoid. Why do we not have the same level of education around our reproductive health? And like, why are we just learning about this when there's a problem, as opposed to learning about how to be proactive? And it was kind of in this process of really what I was going through. Like, I had gone through pregnancy loss. I was really, really struggling. And I kind of thought, like, if we can do this for beauty, we can do this for our reproductive health. And that was one of the initial moments where I decided, like, I think it's time to make a bit of a career shift and use what I've learned in beauty and apply it to reproductive health and fertility. And that was the first push, really.
There's so much I want to dive into there. So first of all, we share being married to medical specialists, and I think understanding from that perspective, how specialists are often very humble in what they don't know, and what what need to know what they don't know, and where they need to draw in other expertise. So I love that, and I also am just so curious, like what are the products, and the subscription, and how sort of like pre proactive and preventative are they in terms of, is this something women should be looking at years before? Because I have lots of thoughts on that too, but I want to hear your side and the product design.
So I would say our first product, even before we had a physical product, was education. We launched education before we launched any of our tests or our supplements. And all of our education is provided by doctors and very specific specialists within their specialty. So you have fertility doctors, OBGYNs, naturopathic doctors, urologists, embryologists, nurse practitioners, like you name it. If it relates to a specific part of the journey, we have the medical professional to go with it to deliver the education. And so that's where we started. And we believe truly that we need to take it upon ourselves as a brand and as a company to help people navigate this journey from a very, very early stage, really, really early. I'm talking like in your 20s, we should be learning about our cycle so that we can actually get ourselves in front of the right specialists earlier than we would have otherwise without this information. And after we launched education a few months in, we were able to start launching our physical products, which is our tests and our supplements. And our at-home tests, so we have 4 of them right now. We have an at-home sperm test, which is the coolest thing ever. And we've got 3 tests for females: an ovarian reserve screening test, an ovulation test, and a pregnancy test. And what most of these tests are intended for is what we call fertility red flags. So these are tests that can be done, again, at home. You don't send off anywhere for the results. Yes, the sperm test can actually be done at home with results in 15 minutes.
Wow.
Right away if you've got an issue. And these tests are intended to be that opportunity for folks to get proactive. So you can be testing things like your ovarian reserve, so the quantity, the number of eggs. You can be doing that in your 20s. You can be testing your sperm right as soon as you decide we're going to start thinking about trying to have a baby, instead of waiting, a year or two in the journey where you've been struggling and trying. Likely the female partner has been doing a lot of things on her end, only to find out, a year or two in, that the male actually needs additional clinical support. And unfortunately, as you know, for women, time is a really expensive currency when it comes to fertility. And we cannot necessarily afford to be waiting a couple years into the journey only to find out there was something we should have known years earlier, because we want to get in front of that doctor as soon as possible. Egg quality declines with age. And so we want to get we want to get those eggs as early as we can if your treatment does involve IVF or egg preservation or embryo preservation as well. So the tests are intended to be proactive, at home, easy, accessible ways for people to get this information as early as possible in their journey.
And I mean, do you feel like I'm surprised that maybe, how should I word this? I would assume that most couples at this point, are fairly team oriented in this issue. Is that not really the approach?
I think we're getting there. I think we are getting to a place where males are starting to talk more about fertility. The data is what's showing that it does need to be a team sport, because the number one reason heterosexual couples in Canada sought IVF the past 2 years was male infertility. And it is number 2 in the US behind egg and embryo banking. And so it's a real problem. The embryo is 50-50. And part of what we set out to do when we created our company was to change the conversation to make it inclusive, because the male element, the male factor, is so critical to the outcome that if we don't involve them in the conversation and they aren't talking about it, we're not going to have the kind of impact we can have on industry outcomes stigma. And so we want to be talking to males. We just did a whole campaign we called Share the Load, where we involved male creators, couples, everybody who's talking about the importance of testing and supplementing along the way so that they can improve their outcomes. But my thesis at the beginning of this was that where mental health kind of was a few years back, where people were talking about it, it was no longer stigmatized. It was talked about at the dinner table. My thesis was that fertility is on that path, and we can help push it there faster by really, really speaking to males as part of the conversation.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, is there intentionality from your company's standpoint in terms of trying to reduce that stigma overall. Like, I don't know, speaking to the statistics of it's just such a massive issue. Like so many people are struggling with this. It's not a small population. And I think there's been a lot of positive shifts so that, women don't necessarily feel, I mean, I still think that there's always going to be an emotional piece where you're judging yourself for having being challenged in this area. Um, is that shifting in general? And what's the difference between genders?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because when you think about what happens when someone is going through infertility, and very specifically when the issue is involving male factor, it's always going to be the woman who is treated. So it's really the only disease out there where your partner has the issue, you are still going to go through the treatment. And we will always, as women, kind of carry that heavier load, I think, physically, specifically in this case, as well as emotionally. But if the male has an issue, there are certainly things he can do to improve sperm quality. There are occasions where he will require a surgery if he has a varicocele or some other physical block. But the female is always going to be the one going through the IVF process with the hormones, egg retrieval, embryo transfer, carrying the pregnancy, at least until, one day there's some robots that can carry pregnancies. But until that happens, it will always be us. And so, when we talk about changing the conversation and changing the stigma and how different genders carry, different elements of this, like there is this element that like we will always have, and as women, I think where we're trying to focus as a brand is firstly, how can we support both sides, but how can we like also really support females and talking about ways that we can prepare ourselves in advance of the fertility journey? How can we resource ourselves with the right practitioners, the right support systems? How can we resource ourselves with the right ways to have conversations, asking for help? And again, putting this out there in a way through our partnerships with doctors and our partnerships with different creators and different brands to like really, really normalize this. Because when you think again about the statistics, 1 in 4 known pregnancies end in loss. 1 in 6 or actually it's now 1 in 5 are struggling with infertility globally. But the numbers are there to suggest that we are not alone, though we still often do feel alone until we are exposed to all these different communities online and we're encouraged to have conversations. It's funny when we, I guess, going through the process of building this company, I'm talking about fertility all day. And almost every single conversation I have, whether it's with a unit carton supplier, our FedEx rep, everybody ends up opening up about their own fertility journey or their brother's fertility journey or their cousin's fertility journey. It impacts all of us so, so deeply. It is so common. And so the more we talk about it, the more as a society and culture, this is going to be normalized. And also that's going to help us all be more proactive, because part of the issue is that, a lot of people just don't know. They don't know what they're supposed to test for. They don't know what they're supposed to look for.
Yeah, I mean, they don't know, but also there's just, I think, still a lot of shame around. So you're going to avoid sort of opening that Pandora's box as long as possible. The supplements are also for both genders.
Supplements are for males and for females. And this is what actually has an impact. And we've shown that it has a clinical impact. So we actually just presented our second study at a conference a couple of weeks ago on the male fertility products. So we were able to, across 2 different studies, show that males who start off with male infertility diagnosis, they take the supplements over the course of 3 months and they're retested semen analysis. We were actually able to show such a significant improvement in sperm motility and sperm morphology as well, just from the oral antioxidant therapy. So just from taking the supplements, you can see a significant improvement, and you can actually see it start to pretty significantly improve in just 30 days. And then it keeps going up, but it remains elevated. And we know, again, on a cycle to cycle basis, that if that sperm motility dips, you're going to lower your chances of success cycle by cycle. So we want to keep that motility elevated, and we want to keep supporting sperm kind of as long as possible, really. But we're able to now show the data that the product can actually have such an impact. And it's incredible because this is a product that, as you mentioned earlier, we've shipped over 40 and now 50,000 products to what we call fertility deserts. So these are places that don't have access to assisted reproductive technology or reproductive health clinicians. And it's a pretty significant population across Canada and the US. About 20% of Canadians are rural and remote, and it's actually 40% of US females of reproductive age don't have access to this kind of care. So being able to ship that many orders just to the deserts, the deserts alone, is so significant because the people don't have to leave their house to to get these tests, to get these supplements. They can get the care and the education at home as a starting point. And then again, what we're intending to do is to educate them with these tests and kind of our various platforms of education, so that if there is a problem, they know they can't put off an appointment. They know they've got to make that effort. And even if the clinic's kind of like a day away, or, you know, you've got to take the time to actually go, because putting it off isn't going to be helpful.
And this research that you just finished, it's essentially using your own tests to determine like what was the shift in 3 months. That's so amazing.
Yeah, so that was the second study. The first study we did at a fertility clinic, where they used the in-clinic semen analysis machine, like the big, huge machinery that they have in clinic. And the second study was on a month-over-month basis using the at-home test results. And so we were able to show through both improvement, and then obviously the month-over-month one, you can see month by month how the improvement happens. It's kind of cool. I think for guys, it's a little bit fun. Like, you can take the home, you can watch your score go up. It's like a video. You get a video of your moving sperm on the results.
My goodness.
So you can kind of look at it.
I have to connect you with my a friend of mine who's a founder. She's created the Canva for video games, and she can create you a little video game too, for so you can demonstrate on, because I think that's hilarious. I mean, in a good way.
Oh my God.
Gamifying, always good, especially with our beloved men. I'd love to know the recommendations that you suggest, like in complementing the supplements, because of course, you know, they're, I'm sure, an amazing boost, but there's probably some, you know, key lifestyle things that boost it even further.
Yes, absolutely. So supplements are supplements, right? They're supplementary to everything else you're doing. And the way that our doctors formulated them, because these were actually formulated by fertility doctors. So literally the people whose job it is to get people pregnant said, this is what we need in the supplement. And they're supplementing your diet and lifestyle and common nutrient gaps, as well as across subfertile populations, there's certain nutrients and antioxidants that tend to be lower. So we want to go like clinically dosed supplemental nutrients on some of those, like a B12, choline, DHA, iron. Those kinds of things need to be a little bit higher in our supplements, but they are meant to be a part of what we call the fertility puzzle. So you need to be eating a diet that is reliant on whole foods. The Mediterranean diet's what's been studied in the fertility space to be the best possible option. That doesn't mean that you need to cut out all of like your favorite, you know, sweet foods, or, you know, the occasional drink here and there for some people who really like their glass of wine. Like, you're not meant to be deprived of the joy that, you know, comes with an amazing meal. But for the most part, you know, we should be eating Mediterranean diet, whole foods, making sure that we are prioritizing fresh fruits and vegetables and fish and meat if you're eating meat. And if you're not, making sure you're getting your protein sources through other forms, so that we can, you know, stay strong. As women, it's very important that we have strong bodies, because pregnancy is a sport and we need to be strong for it. And then the other pieces that, again, these are all, you know, evidence-based lifestyle medicine. We need to be sleeping 7 to 9 hours a night. If you aren't sleeping, you've got to talk to your doctor about ways to support a good night's sleep. Obviously, for the women who might have young kids who, you know, have, you know, other sleep challenges and they're trying for another baby, it's going to be a little less easy to prioritize sleep. We've got to do our very best, because that is really the foundation. That's like how our body resets. It's when our hormones are made to make sure we're sleeping. We have to make sure that we are moving our bodies every single day. Every day, we need to be moving our bodies. We need to be aiming for those 10,000 steps. And as women, we need to be lifting heavy weights 2 to 3 times a week. It is very important. It's so important for anybody struggling with PCOS. Lift those heavy weights.
I love that you said all those things. Totally agree. And I never heard anyone call pregnancy a sport. I do with my clients who are often birthing babies simultaneously with their empires, talk about how it's really preparing for a marathon, both the pregnancy itself and the actual birth. So I love that you use that analogy. Yeah. So where do you recommend a couple starts in your ecosystem to get to know you and the product? And
Yeah, well, we've got a lot of resources on our social media and on our website. We have a blog that we call The Nest, where everything in there is written by and verified by doctors. And it's kind of per category. So if you're thinking about trying to conceive, go in there and it will help you prepare with, you know, diet, exercise recommendations. We really do suggest that you start with at-home testing. So if you are female and you're not tracking your cycle, you better start tracking your cycle. Please do not rely only on an app to track your cycle. You need to have an app with an actual physical input that's measuring something in your body. So we have ovulation tests that are urine strips, so you can measure your pee, and it will tell you what your LH, your luteinizing hormone, looks like to make sure you're getting that peak around kind of in the middle of your cycle. And you can use an app or calendar to track your period as well. But you want to make sure that you have regular cycles. If you do not have regular cycles, straight to the doctor. So we don't want to stick to that messaging where it's like try for a year, just blindly try for a year and then go see a doctor. You know, like if you have any of these warning signs, you're not waiting at all. You're making that appointment. So regular cycle, get on it. If you have painful periods to the point where like you are missing work, you are, you know, you're in your bed with pain, or the bleeding is so extremely heavy that you're going through pads every couple of hours in addition to like whatever you're using, that's a warning sign. You're going to see your doctor. That's not normal. And they can also help with those symptoms. You don't have to suffer at all. Take that sperm test right away. It will tell you if you have issues with concentration, motility. There's other at-home tests, or you can even go into a lab that can test other sperm parameters if you need. But like start with something that's easy and inexpensive at home. If you're female at any age, I would really suggest taking this ovarian reserve screening test. It will measure a hormone called FSH, your follicle stimulating hormone. If that is high, that's another reason why you want to go and see your doctor right away, because that might indicate proximity to menopause. And we don't know how fast your body will transition. And so a doctor might say, you could still have a baby now on your own at home. You're still getting your cycle. But if we're thinking about the future and you might want 3 babies, we might want to consider egg or embryo preservation at this phase so that they can help you be proactive. So we want to make sure we're being proactive. And many, many fertility clinics these days will do a fertility workup in clinic. So you can come to us and we'll help refer you out to a clinic. You can go, check in with your local clinic. Often we don't even need your GP to refer you. A lot of fertility clinics will take self-referrals now. So you can go in for that initial workup to just make sure everything looks good as you start to think about trying to conceive. And then we're going to focus on the lifestyle, because we like to say 3 months of solid preparation before you start trying. So that's the time where you're getting your diet in order, your exercise, you're making sure that your nutrient stores are really built up, especially for females. You want to be taking your iron, you want to be taking your folic acid, you want to be taking all the things that are really, really integral to those first few weeks of pregnancy. And for the males, and I should add, for egg quality, so not just the pregnancy, but for egg quality, we're amping up those antioxidants. We need a high dose of CoQ10. We need other antioxidants like vitamin E and acetylcysteine. And it's the same for the males. We're amping up our nutrient stores, our micronutrients, and our antioxidants to make sure your sperm quality is at its best, because now all the research is showing that baby's health is impacted by male health at the time. Mm-hmm. And so, we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can that's in our power to optimize our outcomes, because why not? Why wouldn't you want to make sure you're at your healthiest when you're creating a new life?
Yeah. And I think it's reassuring for everyone to hear, you can really shift the quality of these things for yourself in a 3-month period. It's not like an all or nothing situation. There are lots of options. I love that you went through just so many right there. And that I'm still back to the score and the gamifying of it. So I think it's going to be such a stressful situation, and how important it is to keep some levity, and if you can, humor, and in your case, like the beauty of these products, so it doesn't feel like always a sort of medicalized procedure, when it's really supposed to be a beautiful encounter, if you will.
I agree. I think that was one of the things that was initially, if not our top 2 or 3, if not our main focus, was to really change the way it looked. Because I remember bringing home, ovulation tests and vitamins, and it was like all a mother with a baby holding a baby. And at the time I was going through pregnancy loss, and I was like, we don't need this extra trigger sitting here on our counter. Like, there's no need. It can just be something that's beautiful looking, that can integrate. And people forget to take their vitamins also. So if it can be beautiful enough to sit beside your bed or on your kitchen counter where you don't forget it, and put it in a way where we put them in little packets, so you've got for females and males on their fertility journey, it's 8 capsules a day. You kind of need all of that. But if we can put it in a little packet, you might not forget it as easily. You can toss it in your purse to go and take it after a meal at work or whatever. And helpful for the guys who tend to forget a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, we'll share all the ways to connect with you in the show notes. Is there anywhere specifically you want to send people, social media wise, or website, a resource? I know you mentioned the blog. I love the name of the blog, by the way.
you can visit us at birdandbe.com. And that's Bird and Be with one E, because we're fun like that. And we're on Instagram, Bird&Be Co, and on TikTok, Bird&Be. So you'll see all of our doctors on there giving tips, answering questions. You'll find our blog on our website where you can read up on literally anything. We've taken so many topics and questions from our own community and had our doctors answer them. So if you have a burning question that has not been answered, please send us a DM and we will make sure we'll do a video on it, or we'll answer it in a blog post. And make sure that everybody really has access to the resources that I wish I had had a lot earlier on. And I hope for younger generations that our goal is to really start educating at a much earlier stage so that we don't get to the doctor's office later in life and say, I wish I would have known.
Well, thank you, Sam, so much for sharing your story. And yeah, I have a couple people that I need to introduce you to. My yeah, this is amazing. So thank you for everything that you're doing. And I'm glad that it's been so successful. I'm sure it's just going to grow and grow and grow. Thanks so much for tuning in to Wellness as a Way of Life for Women Building the Future. I'm Megan Swan, and I'm honored to support your journey to well-being and leadership. For more insights, resources, and connections, subscribe to my Substack through the link in this episode. It is your go-to hub for wellness strategies, and there's free and premium content. Let's keep building a brighter, healthier future together. Until next time, take care and lead well.